I honestly feel like Overwatch is in deep need of having a set official map pool for every tournament. Like right now, for instance, like the map pool we were playing at NG, the qualifiers, are completely different from what we were playing here. So like we had to practice different maps that we're not using here. So like it takes a lot of time to go through a map. And having all these maps, like there's so many maps in Overwatch, like there's no way you're gonna have enough time to like go through every single map. And look at Koth, that's like 3 sub maps. So like you have to go through every single one of them. Like it's so many maps. No team has time for that. So like Blizzard needs to say like these are the competitive maps at the moment, and then like we can practice them, we can go through them and so on. Like because if you have all these maps and you have like all these different comps, all these different play styles, like you're playing against like teams that are different. Like you always need to like prepare differently for each map. Like you don't have time to go through them. So I think it's needed that Blizzard does something.
I mean, I understand why they do it, because they want to see like every map being played and being showcased to the audience public. But it's not, on a competitive level, it's not good, I think. Like, I personally like the DreamHack method. Like, it was ban, pick, ban, like something like that. I think that's good, because you had like the chance of banning the good maps of your opponent, but like not all of them, you know? Like on the, like Gozu gamers, I think, they use like ban until 2 maps left. I think that's a bit too over-exaggerated, but I think the DreamHack is the best. Like ban, pick. I really like that one.
So, I think I've yet to see a system that I think is great. I know like at OG and Apex in Korea, they had it where I think you had to have one of each type of map. I think that's terrible. I think the best type I would think is just literally banning down until like 3 or 5 maps, depending on if it's best of 3, best of 5. I think you shouldn't be forced to play a certain game type if just because Blizzard or the tournament wants you to. Especially when there's certain game types which the community as a whole agrees aren't as good, like 2CP. It can be fun from like a spectator standpoint, but there's also like a lot of stalling and issues with the game type in general. So I think map pool like MLG has, I'm not a fan of it either, but I mean all of us knew what the rules were going into it, so we knew what maps we had to practice, which ones we didn't. But I would like to see more of a veto system, and then I think where it stands right now, if Blizzard keeps adding maps, like it's getting to the point where teams can't practice every map. So that's where having the veto system in, you can be like, okay, we know we're not going to practice these 3 or 4 maps. We're going to veto them every time. So that's where you kind of need to have that system so you don't have to try and practice 13 or 14 different maps because it's just way too much.
Right. I think it's pretty clear that Blizzard wants to go the predetermined map narrative. I think in certain situations that would be good. I think that's what they want to do for the league. I think when you have scheduled not only schedule weekly matches, but also predetermined maps, I think that provides a system where you have very effective scrim practice because you know exactly what you're doing. But in this situation where tournaments are popping up very quickly and we don't have as much time to prepare, especially when they're changing the map pools close to the tournaments, I think that it's not the most effective system for right now. I think the map draft adds a lot of complexity to the out-of-game strategy, and I think it's something that the players want. But if Blizzard has their narrative, then we kind of have to go with it.
To me, it's just what's best for the players will always be like a map draft system, like use a DreamHack. It implements the most strategy. Like teams can practice certain maps, get really refined strategies on them, counter-strat the other team on that specific map, and then show up at the highest level of gameplay possible for viewers. That's why I like it the most. But there's also just some maps don't get played much because either pros hate them or the general public hates them. Like there's not many pros that enjoy playing Volskaya or Ilios, so those are rarely picked, and the public never gets to see them, and viewers kind of lose out on seeing those maps too. So I get where Blizzard's coming from, but I still think the level of play, like the increased level of play from teams properly preparing like a set strategies for maps and then picking banning around them is so useful for viewers. It makes everything so good. Like, especially moving into, we're in the early days of Overwatch. I mean, later on, strategies are only going to become more complex. People will have more coaches and support staff, like analysts, figuring out exactly what's going on, and that's only going to become like a bigger and bigger impact. So I don't know. I really want to see a map draft system used in future tournaments. But if there is predetermined maps, then it should be called out to the players like a month in advance, so that way they know. There's been a lot of different map systems used though. Like OGN used like a system of like predetermined maps, but then you picked maps per round based on those. So let's say first round would be like a hybrid, second round would be like control or assault, something like that, and then it'd go through the system like that. But I don't know. There's lots of systems, lots of tournaments are experimenting with it, and I just hope Blizzard listens to the people who want draft, because I think it has a lot of strategy, and I love strategy stuff.
I believe that Blizzard has a good reasoning behind setting predetermined map pools for tournaments, is to make sure you don't always see like the Dust 2 of Overwatch is King's Row, basically. You don't want to see King's Row, every team play King's Row all the time, because it's going to get boring. You're going to see cool strats pop out every once in a while, but it's going to get pretty boring. You want to see all the cool maps they have, so predetermined map pools is not necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like they could handle it better. Like MLG changed their map pool really close to the tournament, and we missed out on a lot of practice. Like we practiced Eichenwald a lot, like to get really good at it, and now we're not even playing it, and that's like a hit. But that isn't about the predetermined map pool itself, but how they handled it. But I feel like to some degree drafting should be included, because I like drafting a lot. You can draft to your team strength, you can draft to your enemy's weaknesses, and it's really a smart thing for people to do that are good at it, and you can really, a good drafter will really get an advantage in a game, and I think that matters, and I think that's fun, and it's engaging and interactive for analysts to talk about. But we gotta find a good middle ground of not just 100% predetermined map pools, but maybe something like one of the Korean leagues did, where you can draft in between the different map types, which guarantees different. You get 2CP, you get King of the Hill, and you get Payload and Hybrid. You can just draft regarding to that, but it shouldn't be just a complete predetermined map pool, because I think that will get pretty boring too.
I think set map pool is a really bad idea. I think it's forcing players to play something that might be against their grain, and is going to force, sometimes good teams are going to lose to worse teams because that might be their map, and if you don't give the teams a say in that like decision, then you're essentially forcing teams into a worse position. But as much as everyone needs to be able to play all maps, it's not what you want. Like if you look at CSGO, for example, I think they have the best system. They have a pool of maps which they choose from. Once they realize a map isn't very good, it's been beaten to death, all that kind of stuff, they'll remove it from the pool and they'll add a map that has like a lot of promise from the community. I think that would be a really good thing. And just doing a map draft system is the best thing, because that in itself has its own like little unique things that it brings to the game, such as teams that don't want to play Koth, they can ban Koth, but still they might be forced to play one if the other team chooses it and stuff like that. So I think forcing teams to play like 2CP and that kind of stuff is just sort of beating a dead horse. No one wants to play 2CP, it's a bad game mode, and I think the sooner they stop forcing us to play these maps and listen to our opinions on them, the better games we can get and better maps we can get.